Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome everyone to this online meeting of RBKC's Licensing Subcommittee and to thank you for attending. I'm Councillor Pat Healy and I will be chairing the meeting. This meeting is being held via Microsoft Teams and it's also being streamed live. The committee for this hearing comprises Councillor Marie-Therese Rossi and Councillor Ariane Areti and myself. Councillors, can you please introduce yourselves?
Hello, my name is Councillor Marie-Therese Rossi from Redcliffe Ward. Thank you.
Hi there. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ariane Areti from Holland Ward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, if you want to, please turn your cameras off to save breakdown of the system. We are joined today remotely by Paul Phelan and Fiona Johnson from the Council's licensing team, our legal officer, Lindsay Lemessurier, and also with us is our committee officer, Anne Wright, who will be monitoring all of our connections and help with any technical issues we may have. Anne Wright is supported by Gareth Ebenezer, Yasmin Yama and Esme Shari from the governance team. Before we start the hearing for this case, just a few ground rules, please. Keep your microphones on mute until you are invited to speak. Please make sure mobile phones are on silent. Do keep your cameras on when not speaking if you wish, unless we run into connection problems. Please note that the Microsoft Teams chat function is not monitored, so please do not use it. In addition, this is a public meeting and the chat would not be seen in the live stream. Everyone should have received the procedure for this meeting regarding the use of cameras and how to connect back if you lose connection. The case before us today is to grant a licence for Quick Commerce of 154 Old Brompton Road, London, SW5 OBE. I confirm that I have no declaration of interest to make regarding this item. Do the other members have any direct declarations to make? Councillor Rossi.
I have no declarations to make, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Areti?
Nothing to make, Chairman.
Thank you. The quorum for this committee is 2. As there is always the possibility that I may lose connection temporarily during the broadcast, I am nominating Councillor Rossi to be appointed as the substitute chair. Members, please confirm whether that nomination is seconded. Councillor Areti?
Yeah, seconded, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. I confirm that Councillor Rossi has been appointed substitute chair. Thank you, colleagues. For clarity, I will outline the procedure of the meeting, which, as already mentioned, has been circulated with the papers and are online. First, the licensing officer, Mr. Phelan, will give a brief outline of the application. Please could you confirm your attendance?
Good morning, Present Chair.
Thank you. Then I will ask the applicant's legal advisor, Ms. Palmer, to present her submission. She will have up to 10 minutes to do so. She is joined by her client, Mr. Falter, who may be able to assist members should they have any questions. Please could you all confirm your attendance? Ms. Palmer? Ms. Palmer.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, and I'm present and correct.
Thank you. Mr. Falter.
Good morning, Madam Chairman. I'm here as well.
Thank you very much. Questions will be asked after the initial submission by the applicant. Questions will be asked by members of the committee, followed by questions of the responsible authority, and then questions may be asked by the objectors. And I would emphasise that when you get to the stage of asking questions, it's not about presenting your case, that will come later. It's about asking specific questions of the applicant. After the objectors have asked any questions they may have, the responsible authority, Mr. Mahaffey from Environmental Health, will present his objection. He also will have up to a maximum of 10 minutes to do so. Please could you confirm your attendance, Mr. Mahaffey?
Good morning, Madam Chairman. I'm here.
Thank you very much. After the responsible authority has presented his case, questions will again be asked by members of the committee, followed by questions from the applicant and questions by the objectors. After that, the objectors present their case. Now, Ms. Trostoff has already asked to go first. Is that acceptable to the other objectors? Ms. Thompson, Ms. Smith and Mr. Lawton, are you happy with that?
Yes.
And are you happy to go
Yes.
in the order that is actually on the table of those present? That would be Ms. Trostoff, Ms. Thompson, Holly Smith and Charles Lawton. Is that acceptable to you all?
Perfectly.
Yeah. Yes,
Thank you.
that's right.
You will also have up to 10 minutes each to present your objections. You have, in fact, already confirmed your attendance, so thank you very much. Questions, once you've given your cases, questions will be asked by members of the committee, followed by the responsible authority and by the applicant. After that, we will ask our legal officer, Ms. Le Mesurier, to deal with any questions she may have, which will mainly be regarding any conditions that might apply if we were minded to grant a licence. Finally, we will turn to the governance team to see if any issues have been raised that we need to consider. There will be no summing up and the meeting will end. I would like to remind everyone that the committee has read the papers, so there's no need to repeat their content, but please do draw our attention to certain points and pages, and Ms. Hill will move the document on the screen for us. So let's get going. Those of you who are not speaking at the moment, please turn your cameras off unless you particularly wish to be seen. Mr. Phelan, please can you outline the case for us?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Today's application has been submitted by Quick Commerce Limited for the grant of a premises licence at 154 Brompton Road, London, SW5 0BE. This premise currently benefits from a premises licence which permits on sales of alcohol from 10 AM until midnight Monday to Friday, 11 AM until midnight Saturday, and midday until 11:30 PM Sunday. The provision of late night refreshment indoors, 11 PM until 12:30 AM Monday to Saturday, and 11 PM until midnight on Sunday, with unrestricted hours for both the playing of recorded music and regulated entertainment for private use indoors. Today's application for the grant of a premises licence initially sought the sale of alcohol off the premises 24 hours a day, with opening hours of 9 AM until 5 PM for click and collect. A full copy of the initial application can be found at Appendix A on pages 17 to 26 of today's report. The applicant has since amended the hours sought for the sale of alcohol and now seeks off sales of alcohol from 7 AM until midnight Sunday to Wednesday and 7 AM until 2 AM Thursday to Saturday. I can confirm that this application has attracted a representation from Mr. Mahaffey, a Senior Environmental Health Officer. A summary of Mr. Mahaffey's representation can be found at pages 4 and 5 of today's report. 6 further representations have been received which also oppose this application. This includes 3 representations from residents' associations, namely the Onslow Neighbourhood Association, the South Kensington and Queensgate Residents Association, and the Boltons Association. A summary of these representations can be found on pages 5 to 6, with copies attached at Appendix E on pages 35 to 42 of the main bundle. Council records indicate that the premises received 1 complaint over the preceding 24-month period. A summary of this complaint can be found at Appendix F, page 43. I would like to finish by clarifying that the actual number of TENs submitted in the preceding 24-month period is 4. Please disregard the section on page 6, which states 0, as this was due to an error with the data used to formulate the number of TENs received. That concludes the summary of this application. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phelan. Ms. Palmer, would you like to present the applicant's case, please?
Chair, may I interject, please? It's Lindsay Le Mesurier, the legal officer.
Yes.
Can we just clarify all the additional papers that have been received, please, so that everybody's aware what has been received? Perhaps Gareth or one of the licensing officers can put on the screen what they had on earlier on, or whether I can read it out.
Are you in a position to read it out?
I can do. So the additional representations I have, apart from the main pack, There was an email circulated from the applicant on the 15th of January. Then there was additional papers from one of the objectors on the 20th of January with photos. Then there was additional papers from the applicant on the 21st of January, followed by additional photos from Environmental Health on the 22nd of January. Then on the 24th of January, there were additional papers from Noise and Nuisance in relation to planning and from the applicant. And then yesterday, there was additional papers circulated regarding the TENS from licensing and an update on planning, as well as the draft conditions. So that is everything that has been received. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Chairman, it's Anne Wright here. I can confirm that all of those documents were circulated to all parties on the dates given by Liz Lindsay.
Thank you. Ms. Palmer, are you ready to make your submission? You have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Before I start that, may I just ask a couple of questions on the report and the delivery of that? Firstly,
sorry, can I interject again, please? Sorry, I beg your pardon, but you haven't asked any questions of the committee of Mr. Phelan as yet. Did the committee have any questions?
I think that's because we were all quite happy with what he presented, but could I ask my fellow councillors if they do have any questions?
No, not from me.
And obviously there might be questions from the responsible authority or the objector, and then we next go on to the responsible authority's case.
We haven't had the applicant's case yet.
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. So I got myself muddled up. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Please carry on.
Ms. Palmer, your 10 minutes starts again now.
Sorry, if I could first ask some questions, as I say, on the report. It was indicated that we had amended our hours. We had not. We'd amended the hours for delivery of the alcohol to those that were indicated, not the actual hours for sale. And Appendix F, could I please ask the officer if he has received from the Environmental Health team an update to that report confirming that the noise team had undertaken their own investigation, found no evidence of noise nuisance, and that matter is not progressing?
Mr. Matthew? Oh, sorry, go on. Paul, go on.
Thank you, Chair. I haven't seen the direct correspondence from Noise confirming that it's no longer ongoing, but we are with Mr. Mahaffey today, and I'm sure he can confirm that that's fine. In terms of the amendment to the alcohol, I'm looking at the ZAC hearing submission X document, and it does the delivery time. So you're not okay. I see. Apologies, one. So it's just the actual delivery that's being changed, not the sale of alcohol. That's still sought 24 hours a day. No problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So,
please continue, Ms. Palmer.
Indeed, thank you, Madam Chairman. You have before you the brief details of the application, as we've heard, and you have details of the mediation that we attempted to undertake with the various persons making representation, at which stage draft conditions and a plan were filed, which complied with paragraphs 14.4 and 14.5 of your policy document. You also have the applicant submission, which is kindly up on screen at the moment. I do not propose to go through that in depth. I do propose, as you suggest, just to highlight some issues, but I would ask that is indeed taken fully into consideration when you are looking at the application. This is, in fact, an unusual application. It's a completely new style of operation to me. It's what I'm calling an e-convenience store, which will allow people to purchase daily essentials for immediate delivery, available 24/7 without the need for their leaving their home or their business to do that. The sale of alcohol is the only licensable activity requested, and that is limited to off sales. This sort of application is normally limited to an off license or a corner shop or convenience store or a supermarket. As you are aware, these premises are often, as indicated in your policy, permitted to trade until the early hours of the morning, if not for the whole 24 hours. and that's found at paragraph 12.1 of your policy, which is on page 63 of your report if you want to just check that. You also have several supermarkets in the area licensed to sell 24/7, but that is where the similarity ends. Customers usually go to shops and take their purchases away with them. This can mean both people and motorised vehicles, with a risk of car doors slamming again, which can be disturbing, especially later at night. And also, alcohol could be consumed in the street, which in turn could lead to nuisance and disorder issues. No customers will be allowed in these premises or to attend these premises after 6 o'clock at night, and a condition is volunteered to that effect. Some smaller shops are now beginning to work with the increasingly popular delivery services, and they include firms such as Deliveroo and Just Eat, with which you'll be familiar. But the difference between my client's operation and those operations is that those shops have no direct control over the delivery riders themselves. And if they make a mistake or act in an inappropriate manner, they've got no means to sanction them. ZAP, however, takes the next step up in control and directly contracts with the riders, and not only directly trains the riders, but has a clear set of rules. And you have the plan in front of you so that you can see an outline of those rules. Delivery firms are using riders with various forms of transport, but environmentally conscious ZAP is again offering another level of care, promising non-motorised transport after 6 p.m, and that is offered as a condition. That's not only eco-friendly, but virtually no noise. It will also be very apparent from the papers before you that Joe Falter, who is with you today, a director of the applicant company, is very conscious of community protection. He has been keen to work with authorities and residents and neighbours from the outset, and following liaison with the police, conditions have been agreed and there is no police objection or representation to this application. As you've heard, the original application, commensurate with government guidance that applications for off licences follow trading hours, sought 24/7 hours, and you've heard that the hours for delivery have been amended following the meetings with the Residents Association and Mr. Mahaffey and hearing their concerns. Licensing legislation and your policy of necessity has to cover a whole range of licensed premises. The policy accepts quite rightly that different categories of outlets will require different considerations. Off licenses have their own specific paragraph at 12, and the difference between that and the general paragraph 8 on hours is recognised back as far as paragraph 2.9, where it is split into both sub 1 and sub 2, sub 1 dealing with the on-license style premises, and sub 2 dealing with off-licenses, where there is a far lower bar. The details are set out in the submission and also in your policy, so I won't read that again. They have satisfied the requirements of, or my client has satisfied the requirements of paragraph 2.2 and has indeed shown how it would not lead to crime and disorder, disturbances and noise nuisance, and has provided measures by which the promotion of licensing objectives will be achieved. The police are satisfied that there will be no crime and disorder. The operation is neither attractive nor conducive to street drinkers. It's, with the greatest of respect, virtually impossible to see how, with this particular operation, the delivery of alcohol can impact on the nuisance objectives. Deliveries are being made 24/7 anyway. And the fact that some of those may contain alcohol appears to be effectively irrelevant, with the exception of the fact that there will be a clear benefit to the residents if this application is granted, because they will have the license terms and conditions to constrain the applicant and to give them comfort. There is nothing within the premises regarding alcohol storage and movement that would give rise to a noise nuisance. We say conversely that this operation has very clear benefits for the community. It will provide a service that is very important for those for whom convenience, not having to go out in all weathers and perhaps travel some distance to find what they need, is important. This will include busy working people, parents, the elderly, and those with mobility issues. It will create a long-term usage for this site, which has been empty for some time. It will be of benefit to the community, excuse me, in terms of life being brought back into the area, to struggling landlords and to the council. It will employ up to 50 people from the locality. To assist with the control of potential issues in the area, it will reduce the number of people who need to go out onto the street to get their alcohol requirements for the several shops and other premises in the near neighbourhood that have the ability to sell alcohol late at night and into the early hours of the morning. It will be noted that none of the residents living either over or next to the application have made specific representations concerning this application. The operation has been going on since mid-December. If it had caused the problems feared by those making representations, we feel sure that those residents over and above next to us would have been amongst the first to raise an objection. To summarise, this is a licensing hearing to deal with licensing issues. The concerns that have been raised centre on the delivery of alcohol from the premises. There is, with respect, absolutely no proof that if one of the deliveries happens to include alcohol, that will lead to harm being caused to any of the licensing objectives. In all the circumstances, we would respectfully request a grant of this application in the terms and the conditions that will be discussed and hopefully agreed. And the only aspect of deliveries which will go past your midnight hour mentioned in paragraph 8 of your policy will be on Thursdays to Saturdays, when we're asking please for 2 o'clock. That will enable the applicant's innovative offer and service to be made available for this community. The promise on delivery times makes it vital that the licensed premises are centrally sited to service that community. If granted in acceptable terms, the existing premises licence about which you have heard will be surrendered. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer. I'd like to ask a question to clarify what you said at the beginning. Are you now seeking a licence to sell alcohol off licence from 7 in the morning until midnight on Sunday to Wednesday, and on Thursday to Saturday from 7 in the morning until 2 o'clock in the following morning? Is that correct?
Not entirely, madam. No, the application remains for the 24 hours during which orders may be received and alcohol allocated. The concerns have been centred around the delivery of that alcohol when it leaves the premises and goes on its way to the customer. And we have therefore offered a condition to limit those delivery times to coincide with your policy on Sundays to Wednesdays and asking for an additional 2 hours on Thursdays to Saturdays for those delivery times.
Thank you. Mr. Phelan.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify a point Ms. Palmer raised there with regards to where the sale of alcohol is appropriate. So you don't need a licence to take an order for the sale of alcohol, but you do need a licence when it's dispatched. So in terms of the 24-hour operation, I just wanted to clarify that You would be able to take an order outside of licensable hours, but again, it would be when it's dispatched. It would need to be dispatched within the licensed hours.
Thank you. Do my fellow councillors have questions? Councillor Rossi.
Yes, if I could just ask Ms. Palmer how the premises are going to deal with age verification, because I'm assuming that you put your orders in online or over the phone, and then someone goes around with an electric bike and delivers it. When are you going to do the age verification? Are you going to do it as the driver delivers it? I'm not quite sure that is going to be easy to enforce. Thank you.
Thank you. A very pertinent question, and of course something that the applicant has given considerable thought to, and it is set out in the documentation. When the order is presented, they will not take an order unless the customer has confirmed that they're 18 or over. The drivers will be trained in the Challenge 25 policy, which is one of the conditions that is offered. And the rider will be checking using the sort of ID that is set out in your model conditions and in respect of which a condition is offered. And they will not pass over the alcohol unless satisfactory ID is obtained if they think that the customer looks under 25 when they reach the premises. Neither will they hand it over if they think that the customer is inebriated, is drunk, yes, they won't hand it over, and it will be returned to the warehouse.
Thank you.
Councillor Oretti. You're muted. Turn your microphone. That's better.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Ms. Smith, the other question about the deliveries. Do the licensing applicant uses a combination of motorbikes and just the bicycles, or I know you said it's electric and eco-friendly, but just want to clarify on what sort of vehicles would you be using?
Yes, thank you. As indicated, there is a clear condition stating that after 6 o'clock at night, and of course it's in the evening when noise issues are most noticeable, and that is the area that is most considered. After 6 o'clock at night, they will only use non-motorised bikes. There will only be non-motorised. It is proposed to use that sort of bike as a primary rule in any event, but there may be an occasion from time to time when during the day it is other than a non-motorised bike, but not after 6 o'clock.
Thank you. Just an add-on question. What is the radius of deliveries? Would you deliver like locally 1 or 2 miles or 5 miles or 100 meters?
I know it's promised within a very short time. I'm going to ask Mr. Falter if he would answer that, because his knowledge is obviously far more pertinent than mine on that.
Right.
He's unmuted himself. Go ahead, Mr. Falter.
Yes. So the whole purpose of ZAP is to provide customers with very fast and convenient delivery, and to that end, we set a radius in the region of 1.5 to 2 kilometers from the location of our store.
So would you, sorry, am I allowed to?
Yes, please, continue.
Yeah. So would you reject an order that's beyond the said radius?
Yeah, I think a great question. And the way we approach it is that we use technology which looks at the GPS location of the mobile application that the customer is using. And a customer that is outside of the available delivery radius, which is defined by us, would not be able to place an order in the first place.
Right, cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Palmer, I'd like to know where the riders are going to park their bicycles or other vehicles if it's not going to be outside.
Well, Madam Chairman, there is an area immediately outside the premises which is shown on the photographs as being an area of small paviers as opposed to the actual pavement. And that, I understand, is within Demise and would be an area where it would be appropriate to park the bikes.
So there could be a number of bikes parked outside the premises?
Yes, on the area owned or within the Demise of my client, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Mahaffey, do you have any questions to raise?
Good morning, Madam. Yes, I have two questions. The first question, both questions are actually for Mr. Falter. Mr. Falter, could you explain to the committee what you did in regards to the email that you sent to us when you said that you would investigate the complaint by looking at the CCTV on the 6th of January? Could you give us an update on that, please?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. And just to give some additional context, our location is covered by CCTV, which enables us to see quite clearly, at least the interior and as part of this application for the exterior of the premises, what's happening. We received a notification that a resident had reported noise from riders congregating late at night. The claim was not substantiated, which made it difficult for us to investigate in a great deal of detail. But what I have done is I've reviewed the CCTV footage from that night. I have seen the exit of one delivery rider at around the time the complaint was reported. I was not able to show or see that there was more than one rider as part of that, and therefore, in addition, I was not able to pick up on the sound recording from the CCTV any meaningful amount of noise. So on that basis, I was unable to confirm the complaint that was made.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Falter. Also, I sent you an email yesterday with a photograph showing some air conditioning condenser units at the back of the premises. Are these units, do they belong to you or are they from another premises?
Yes, and sorry not to reply in the build up to the big day. I can confirm that they belong to us, and I mean, if I can offer a little more, I have also discussed the matter with the council planner, Ashley. But yes, I confirm that they belong to us.
And can you confirm when they were installed?
They were installed, I mean, I can't tell you the precise date, but it would have been in the probably the second week of December.
Right. And have you applied for planning consent for them?
I have not.
Okay.
But plan to do so.
Okay. So you forgive me if there is no. We have, as you appreciate, we have concern that you would not be compliant with the noise SPD for the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea for building services plant. Would you
I'm
accept
sorry,
that?
is that a question to me, or?
Yes, it is. Would you accept that because you haven't applied for planning permission, you haven't confirmed that they'd be compliant with the noise specific planning document for building services plan for Kensington and Chelsea? It basically sets down noise levels for them.
Yeah, so I accept that. I mean, I had a discussion with Ashley yesterday, who confirmed that we're well within our rights to make that application after the date of installation, and we fully intend to do that and to comply with the full extent of the law.
Okay, that's fine. Madam Chairman, I'm finished for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mahaffey. Do the objectors have any questions to ask?
Can I just ask for a couple of points of clarification, please, Madam Chair?
Yes, of course.
I think Ms. Palmer mentioned that the premises had been operational, or the business had been operating since mid-December, and that no complaints had been received from mid-December onwards. My understanding was the first 10 was granted for the 11th of January 21. So I just want to check I didn't miss that one had been granted for December.
Mr. Phelan.
I can confirm that there was a 10 granted from the 15th of December to the 21st of December for the off sale of alcohol. And that was for 24 hours a day.
And that was for 24 hours. Thanks very much.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. The other one was I just wanted to confirm when you were talking about 24-hour alcohol sales in the stretch of road on Old Brompton Road from Gledhow Gardens, which is where the commercial unit is, the estate agents to South Kensington Tube Station. There are no other 24-hour alcohol sales units there, is my understanding. I just wanted to confirm that with maybe Mr. Phelan, please.
Just bear with me. We're going to pull up the page now that shows the current licensable hours within the immediate vicinity.
Thank you.
It should be on the screen in the next couple of seconds.
I know it's here. Thank you.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, you may, but can we just finish this one first, please?
Yeah, I have one more as well.
Good morning, Chairman. It's Fiona Johnson from the licensing team.
Yes.
Just checking through the reports that you can see on screen, and I can't see anything that seems to suggest that there are any other 24-hour deliveries in place in that stretch.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that. And then the next point was just confirmation from either Ms. Palmer or Mr. Falter, but I know Ms. Palmer mentioned this was a new operation for her, but those of us that live on the Boltons Association side, we are already serviced by another operation, e-convenience operation, Wheezy, and they operate out of industrial premises on Imperial Road. And I just wanted to clarify that I think when we spoke with Mr. Falter, your original intention was indeed to operate out of more industrial premises rather than take the higher cost of the retail premises.
Ms. Palmer?
I'm not entirely sure of the relevance of that question, Madam. The application is before you for these premises, and he's explained that needs to be in the centre of the area he's wanting to serve because of the need to get to the person who's making the purchase very quickly. It's a 20-minute turnaround that is virtually guaranteed, and so obviously he needs to be central, and that is why the application is made for this site.
Thank you. Excuse me. Yes.
May I add a point in response to that?
Sorry, who's
comment?
this? Who's this?
It's Joe Falter.
I'm sorry, who?
It's the applicant, madam.
Yes, please.
Just to confirm that the service that Lorraine is referring to does not actually make deliveries to that precise location as of now, from the location that they are operating in Fulham.
Thank you. Ms. Trosto, if you wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, it's a couple of questions actually.
Yes, go ahead.
Ms. Palmer said that it's convenience products which are delivered. In ZAP's application, it also mentions items customers may be embarrassed to ask for face-to-face. So I just wondered what those items are. Second question is, how do the delivery drivers get their delivery ticket? How are the delivery drivers paid? Are they paid on a by trip basis? Then another question is it intended that the driver will take a picture of the valid age verification when delivering the alcohol, and is then somewhere in the administration a check installed that it's consistent with the data that was provided when the order was made?
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Trostoff. There were several questions there. I wonder if you could remind me what the first one was, please. I'm afraid I've not taken a note of it.
No worries. What are the items that you include in your offering, which are items that you state customers may be embarrassed to ask for face-to-face?
I will ask Mr. Falter to answer that in just a minute, but before I do, perhaps I could just comment before I ask again Mr. Falter to fill in any details on the steps that are taken by the riders. The riders will be trained before they are allowed to take up service with the company, and the company will unusually directly contract them, and they won't be allowed to work for them unless they have got a direct contract, and they won't be allowed to work for them unless they've undertaken training, which will include, amongst other things, those items that are not allowed to be sold, including alcohol and the Challenge 25 policy. So where there are prohibited sales, they will be made aware of those. And there were various other parts of the question that I know that you wanted answered with regard to whether or not they took a photograph of the ID and whether that was then checked from time to time or on each occasion. I'm not sure what quite you were asking there. And I will ask now Mr. Falter if he would be kind enough to just fill in on the details of that.
Certainly. I think all extremely relevant and pertinent questions. I can't tell you on behalf of our customers what they would consider to be an embarrassing purchase. I think that convenience stores in general develop a relationship with customers in their community, and we expect to do the same. I can tell you that I imagine that some customers might be embarrassed to ask for certain over-the-counter medication. They might be embarrassed to ask for products such as condoms. They might be embarrassed to ask for alcohol. So I don't want to speculate too much as to what might drive that. But I think there is certainly clearly a service where it's important for people who want something immediately and they don't want to have to go into a shop and ask for it potentially in front of other people. So I hope that answers your question. I think
partially, sorry, just one follow-up. Does it mean that, you know, if there is a product like sex toys or whatever, which would be in demand from your customers, that would be included in your product range?
I mean, we don't currently sell sex toys. We do sell condoms. I think, you know, our offering is fairly much in line with what you would expect to find, you know, sold in thousands of convenience stores across the country. And, you know, yes, so I think our offering will depend on what customers consider to be relevant. Yeah, I hope that's clear enough.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Can you answer it?
Yes. So let me just expand a little bit on what Ms. Palmer has detailed around our rider training efforts. We have, let me put it this way. We believe in a very different approach to that taken by most gig economy delivery companies, and we invest very significantly in firstly acquiring riders who are of the highest quality, but then investing in a training and vetting procedure which goes far above what you will find within other players in the on-demand delivery space. Delivery riders, firstly at Zapp, are required to read and engage with a detailed training manual before they are and pass the test on the content of that manual before they are hired. They each undergo a telephone interview with my operations team. They each undergo an on-site interview face-to-face with the location supervisor when they arrive. This is an unusually heavy process, and it is designed to recruit riders that are really, you know, of a high quality, that are intelligent, that specifically have a good manner with customers, which is something that's extremely unusual in the industry. When an order comes in, sorry, let me address your question on payments. Riders are paid, receive a guaranteed hourly payment. This is another one of the key differences between us and other on-demand delivery players who frequently pay purely on an order basis. And secondly, who recruits their riders from, let's call it, the cloud. And in our case, our riders will be linked to our locations, which means that we build a degree of training, of camaraderie, and of much lower what we call churn, i.e. our riders stay with us for a lot longer. But all that combines to mean that the training sticks. It's much easier to enforce, and I hope that answers that part of the question. When an order comes in, it comes up on our screen, and a delivery rider is assigned to deliver that order. They then, at the same time, the order is picked and packed at the location and handed over to them inside the premises. They then deliver the order to the customer. Any items containing alcohol, and you know, we have some experience of this now, having operated under the TANs without issue. The items containing alcohol have an 18+ sticker on them. The rider is well aware of this and is trained in the matter, And upon arrival at the customer, he will ask for one of the approved identification forms to confirm that the customer is over 18. We do not currently take a photograph of that. However, by completing the order, which the rider takes when he arrives, he confirms that he has made that order, made that delivery.
So there is a portion of the pay of the rider which is paid by trip on top of your hourly rate, just to confirm it.
So the reason I'm slightly hesitant here is that our incentive model may vary, and so while it's the case for now that it's the case for now that riders are guaranteed an amount which is above the minimum wage, and yes, it may well be the case that that part of that incentivization may come as a per order bonus, just as it's entirely possible that they could be incentivized in other ways. But that's how we approach it for now.
Yeah, and just to explain, the reason why I'm asking the question is that you cannot verify if there's an issue of deliveries to underage people from your administrative perspective. If you're sitting in your office, you can just assume that your driver followed all your rules and checked and wouldn't deliver alcohol if it was someone who appeared to be below 18. But it is not in the interest and it's not incentivized to not to deliver the alcohol because he's paid for it. So the question is, if he brings the alcohol back, will he still get paid for the trip?
Yes, he will get paid.
Okay.
Do any of the...
I think I should add to that the rider is heavily incentivized to follow our rules and procedures. The following of the rules and procedures is of a far higher importance, and reflected in their incentivization and the disciplinary action and processes that we've set in place is of far higher importance than the volume of deliveries that they make, which, as I previously stated, has for the time being has very little impact on the income that they generate.
Yeah. In the documentation which we received, which outline all the different rules to follow, it's a little bit less clear because it says delivery drivers to be under direct contract and control when delivering alcohol after 24 hours. So it's not during normal hours, and whenever possible at other times. I think that's far more vague and generous than what you just stated.
I think you're wandering into the area of your own submission. So can we move on, please? Do any of the other objectors have any questions of the applicant?
Madam Chairman, may I just ask a couple of questions? Charles Lawton from the Onslow Neighbourhood Association.
Is that Charles Lawton?
It is.
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead. I gave my name first, Madam Chairman.
Sorry, didn't hear. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'd like to know about the parking of the bikes and whether the applicant will acknowledge that I think in every single photograph, the rear wheels of the bicycles are actually protruding over the forecourt onto the public pavement. Is that acknowledged?
Ms. Palmer, would you like to respond?
And if it is acknowledged, what do they propose to do about it? Because to my way of thinking, this is, and that photograph now shows quite clearly that there's not enough space on the forecourt for these bicycles, and they're protruding over to the public pavement.
Ms. Palmer.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Lawton, for your question. I accept that the bicycle at the end of the road that we're looking at from this angle does have its back wheel protruding slightly over the pavement. I would hesitate to say that it is causing an obstruction to the extent that it would make anybody move out into the road and not be able to pass. I understand that there is still a clear width, but I do hear what you say, and so does my client. And steps can be taken to arrange for those bicycles to be parked in a manner so that they don't protrude. If the herringbone style of parking is tidied up a little, that should address the situation. Mr. Falter, if you wanted to add anything to that, could you please do so? But if you're happy with my explanation, then that's fine.
Yes, and I think just to add that we will be fully compliant with any steps that are required of us under the highways rules.
Can I just interject here, please? It's Lindsay Lamasurio, legal advisor.
Yes, please.
Can I just say, from a highways perspective, although the forecourt area may well be within the demise of the premises, it may well still be deemed to be highway, albeit privately maintainable highway, which the Highway Authority have a duty to keep free from obstruction. So that may be something that the applicant needs to bear in mind as to whether the Highway Authority would be agreeable to bikes being parked out there temporarily or not. I'm just flagging that up as an issue. Just because it's private forecourt doesn't mean it's not highway.
Can I also make a point that in the photograph you can see a pram being buggy being wheeled along, and clearly, with the trees as well. Anybody passing by, I mean, it's two buggies would have a difficulty of passing. But anyway, that was one question. The other question I have is about a more general.
So I'm so sorry. Could I please just come back, because we heard some very helpful information from the officer. As she's quite rightly said, this is a highways authority issue, and if there are infringements or issues, it is something that will be looked into by the highways authority, and my client will obviously look into it more carefully, and he can discuss the whole issue with the highways authority. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Ms. Trosser, you want to come back?
Mr. Lawson wants to come back.
Yeah. Would you like to come back?
May I speak or not?
No, I'm sorry. Had you finished with your questions, Mr. Lawton?
I had not finished with my questions.
Okay, well, continue then, please.
Right. What I want to know is how, in relation to this dispersal plan and the conditions, once the riders have left the premises, I am at a loss to understand how these conditions, such as not using side streets, etc., at certain hours, how on earth are they going to be monitored? It's all very well having conditions, but if they can't be monitored, I mean, they're pointless. And I don't understand. Are the riders going to, for example, have head cameras which could be examined as to which roads they've gone down? How are we? There are many conditions, or in the dispersal plan, which say that they will do this, they will do that, they won't do this, they won't do that. But I mean, how on earth is this going to be monitored by people back at the premises?
If I may answer the question directly, I think it's an excellent question, and one that technology allows us to deal with very simply. Our riders are tracked at all times by GPS. We can review the route of any delivery that they followed pretty much at any time, including live. So we can be very sure of the route that they take and of their precise movements at all times.
Thank you. Is that the rest of your questions, Mr. Lawton?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Chairman.
Ms. Trostoff, you wanted to come back?
Yes, I had a question about the bicycles in front. I just went by this morning, and there were, instead of normally there were 3, now there are 5. I just wondered, how many bikes do you think you need at the maximum in front of your premise to be able to service your clients.
Thank you, Ms. Trostoff, for that question. I think, as it has been pointed out, this really is a matter for the Highways Authority, and perhaps your questions could be raised with them.
I'm so sorry, but let me reiterate that space on public pavements is a benefit for residents, and wider spaces.
But it's not a licensing matter. That's what's being said. It is not a matter for the licensing committee.
Okay.
Do either of the other objectors wish to ask any questions? Ms. Thompson?
Oh, no, I did mine, thanks.
Okay. Ms. Smith?
Yes, I had a question about the delivery vans that will come and bring supplies to the store.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? It's Holly Smith.
Yes.
I have a question about the delivery vans that will come and deliver supplies to the store. I noticed the other day there was apparently a refrigerated van that left its motor running for a long time in front of the store. So I was wondering if you have any specific controls over your delivery vans.
One of the conditions that has been suggested by the, I think it's your legal team or the council's legal team, is to ensure that there are no deliveries to the premises in antisocial hours, and we are very willing to accept that.
But that is not what was being asked. The question was, what control do you have over delivery vans running their engines while we're waiting to come in and collect their order?
No, it's actually delivery vans apparently bringing supplies into the store, I think, to restock the store.
Do you have anything else to say, Ms. Palmer?
Yes, madam, thank you very much. If it's a refrigerated van, I anticipate that it would need to keep its refrigeration system running. But as I say, we're very willing to accept a condition that deliveries will not be permitted to the premises during antisocial hours. I believe it was between 11 o'clock at night and 7 o'clock the following morning. So it should not cause a nuisance to those living in the area.
Well, I was thinking of pollution, especially if 2 or 3 vans line up and they all leave their engines running. We have an increase in pollution along that area.
Well, madam, the issue before the committee today will be the licensing objectives, and that will be noise.
Yes, thank you. Could I ask if Mr. Mahaffey has any questions? No, I've already done that, sorry. Could I ask Mr. Mahaffey now to present his case?
Sorry, madam, just getting up some documents. Okay, thank you very much. Right, madam, the premises are located in the basement and ground floor premises. There's residential on the first and upper floors of the premises. Our main concern here is the potential nuisance from the exterior noise that can affect these residents. Whilst I appreciate the Old Brompton Road is a busy road during the daytime, as the night goes on, the traffic levels decrease, the lulls in the traffic increase, and as a result, any noise or any disturbance that takes place outside the premises can be audible and highly disturbing to our neighbours in the properties adjacent or opposite the premises. Clearly, what we're looking at here is if the premises is to operate after midnight, it has to have the appropriate management controls and supervision, dissemination of information, and sanctions against any employee who breaks them. And clearly that's a matter which Mr. Falter has to have in place, and it is something which we want to make sure is in place if this licence is to be granted for the hours which has been requested in the application. In my representation, I could ask for a reduction of hours and asked the licence to be cut back to midnight. Clearly, the statement of licensing policy specifies a midnight hour, and if the licence is to be extended past that, the council have to be of the opinion that any measures that are added to the operations of the business should not adversely affect our residents. And clearly this is what we've been trying to draw out from Mr. Falter. The concern we have is the fact that he doesn't have full control over his staff at all times. Clearly, it will be a reactive situation, and what we want is to make sure that the appropriate measures are there and that they are monitored and managed such that he minimises the impacts of this use on the neighbours. Now, the concern we would have is that if this is not done, as it was the case on the 6th of January this year, when the resident reported that she could hear noise from people outside the premises and it was affecting her, we don't want that to be happening on a regular basis, because residents will tend to sleep between the hours of 11 and 7, and if they are not getting their full night's sleep, then clearly that's going to be rather debilitating for them, and it will be a potential public nuisance. I also have concerns with regards to the hours at which they have amended the application to. I very much welcome the midnight on the Sunday to Thursday. But again, I still there may be some ability to have later hours on a Friday and Saturday, Saturday and Sunday mornings. But what I would say is that Thursday nights and Friday mornings are still part of the work night, and I would have concerns about 2 a.m. on the Friday morning, which is requested in the application. Bear with me a second. I need to get my thing down. Right. In regards to the conditions that have been offered by applicants, I welcome their willingness to engage with local residents. The important condition is the external management plan for the operation of the premises. Clearly, this is where everything has to be identified and everything has to be then mitigated as part of the overall management. And clearly, there's a lot of issues that have been raised and are addressed in it. What he has done is says that the local authority will agree it. In my condition, they changed it to the word agree. I don't like the word agree because the council will not agree somebody else's plan. The onus is on the operators to get their plan in place and to make sure that it is appropriate. It's the council don't have full understanding of the business going on, and hence we would be happy to feed into it. But at the end of the day, the plan is wholly the responsibility of the operator, and the council cannot be seen to being implicit in that plan. If we are to take any form of enforcement action against the premises, then we have to ensure that we are not part of that plan. And clearly it's down to the operator to monitor it, manage it, review it, and to liaise with residents and his staff to ensure that what is in place is appropriate for the use and operation of the premises. The other condition 13, I've never had this condition 13 before, where they're asking for saying only electric or non-motorized vehicles be used for customer deliveries between 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. I don't know how we're going to enforce that, but it's going to be a condition which they will have to comply with. I've never seen anybody being so specific in their operational plan. Right. The next question. I also sent through some air condensing unit photographs to Mr. Salter yesterday. There's been 2 rather large air condensing units put out at the back of the premises. We are having a complaint with regard to noise and vibration from them, from a neighbour. And clearly the issue really here is they need planning permission. But the fact is, I would like to add additional condition over and above what is in my representation to ensure that the building services plant located at the rear of the premises should not give rise to a nuisance to neighbouring residents. There is no conflict with the planning here because there is no conditions on it. So there is no duplication with regard to the planning process. And as such, I would prefer if that condition can be also agreed and attached to any permission that you put forward. Basically, Madam, the application does concern me. The later it operates, the greater the impact it will have on residents. The management here is key. It's implicit in the operation that they get the processes and procedures right to manage the premises, control the staff, ensure that the staff are appropriately trained, and they have sanctions against them as and when contraventions of the system arises. And clearly, my view is that the license to midnight is fine. I have concerns after midnight. I have concerns on the Friday night. I consider that maybe a 1 o'clock would be more appropriate for Friday morning. And the decision is yours with regard to whether the premises operates to 2 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday mornings. Thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you. Do any of the committee have questions of Mr. Mahaffy? Councillor Rossi?
Just to say, Mr. Mahaffy, I agree entirely with what you say about the Brompton Road quietening down in the night time. But close by there are quite a few restaurants and things like that which are open. So I just wondered what you would say about that, and do they all shut at midnight?
Madam, we do have a couple of premises that operate later after midnight, 158, which is to be the old Eclipse, and we also have Namlong Shaker. But they're the only premises that operate after midnight. Some of them may have people disperse after 12. I think the latest dispersal from some of the other premises would be past. But restaurants tend not to be as busy up until midnight. So the number of people that disperse from residence around midnight are not as great as if they'd be at 10 o'clock in the evening when the majority of people have been out to eat. The other two premises, they are later premises, but at the same time, the streets are highly reverberant. Noise from any disturbance underneath somebody's bedroom window is going to be reflected up into the premises. And the complaint from the 6th of January this year indicates that clearly there is potential for a problem. And if it is not managed correctly, then residents are not going to be able to sleep to the same degree as if the premises wasn't operating.
Thank you.
Councillor O'Reilly? Do you have any questions, Councillor O'Reilly?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Mr. Mahaffy, the timings that you suggested, I mean, looking at the timings, is that the last pickup, or are you saying that would be the dispersal timing?
Well, it would be the timing at which the supply of alcohol should cease from the premises.
Right, got it. Okay, all right. That's it, Chairman. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mahaffy.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any questions of Mr. Mahaffy?
Yes, indeed, Ma'am. Thank you very much indeed. I'll try and take it in the order that he was talking to keep it clear. Mr. Mahaffy, you spoke about controls and sanctions having to be in place, and you have accepted that there has been a plan delivered to you, and in fact it was delivered to you as early as the 12th of January. You did indicate that you didn't want to comment on it, but we did ask for any comments that you may care to make if you wanted any other issues addressed, and no such comment has been received. I would respectfully submit that that plan does indeed show the sort of controls over both the staff and the riders, and sanctions over riders, which is something that other operations, particularly those using the non-contracted riders, such as Deliveroo, just cannot offer. We can offer them, and we do, which is something unusual and most certainly complies with the requirement in the policy. You do mention about the policy that there's a specific indication that midnight will be the terminal hour when representations are made, unless we can show that we're complying with the licensing objectives. We say in any event that we can and have shown that, but I would ask you to accept that the policy is in fact divided, and off licenses are dealt with using different wording, and that different wording is clearly set out both in the submission that I've made and obviously in your own policy. And the lower bar says this: the paragraph advises an applicant seeking hours after midnight, this is an applicant for an off license, to show that this would not lead to crime and disorder, disturbances and noise nuisance, and to provide measures by which the promotion of the licensing objective...
Ms. Palmer, what is your question to Mr. Mahaffey?
I'm asking him to accept that the reference that he was making to paragraph 8 being the criteria is perhaps not accurate, that in fact paragraph 12 is the correct criteria, and I was just reminding him of that criterion.
Thank you. Mr. Mahaffey.
Well, the issue really is it's a promotion of the 4 licensing objectives. This is not like somebody going into an off license and buying a bottle of wine and walking away. This is somebody coming out of a premises, bringing out alcohol, starting up a bike, and off they go. Congregating outside, people being brought back to the premises. I don't see the difference between this and any other premises in the borough. And clearly the issue of public nuisance, if the management on control of the people outside the premises is not of a high standard at all times, then the potential for public nuisance then becomes so much greater. And clearly that will be down to your client to make sure that he has everything in place to deal with that. At the end of the day, an awful lot of these licenses can, if they are operating late in the evening, we have the sanction of coming back and reviewing them. But reviewing a premises license is not always as simple as people think. It takes time, it takes energy, and it takes a lot of legal processes to get to the stage where that license is amended or revoked. The important thing is to have the appropriate measures in place, the appropriate management, appropriate liaison with residents, and to ensure that when the premises operates, nobody is going to be affected or have any form of amenity diminished.
Thank you, Mr. Mahaffey. Would you accept that Mr. Falter has always been very willing to work with you and to work with the community, and has indeed put appropriate measures in place? He's had over 600 orders, I understand, since he has begun this business. And if the only complaint is the complaint of the 6th of January, then I would say that since that time he has very clearly learned the way he has to put in measures and has succeeded in doing that. You also mentioned about condition 13 and the non-motorised vehicles and how we are going to enforce it. It will be quite simple. If anybody is out on a bike that is not motorised, that is a breach of the condition. But simply my client won't allow any rider to be contracted to the hours after midnight unless they are using one of these bikes. I will just check that that's exactly the situation with Mr. Falter in a moment, but I believe that that will be the case. Then the other issue you raised was on the condenser units. I'm afraid I've lost, forgive me, the request that you were making to the council about planning permission and a condition that you wanted on the license. Could you help me with that?
Right. I'm sorry. There's so much there. I don't know what the question is. Is the question you want me to answer with regard to the condenser units, or was there something else you needed before that, Ms. Palmer?
I beg your pardon. I should have allowed you to answer. The first question was, will you accept that there will indeed be every effort or every enforcement of that condition, and condition 13 is a good condition?
Well, my view is the proof of the pudding is in the eating, isn't it? It's more a case of ensuring that things are done. We have to see, this is really where liaison with residents is key, and to also ensure that Mr. Falter continues to review his CCTV and to look at the management that he needs to put in place. He has to ensure that everything that he does is of a high standard to minimise the impact of the premises on the residents. And clearly this is the opportunity for him to prove that if the licence is granted. In regards to your second question, with regards to the air condenser unit, as you appreciate, we will be looking at the public nuisance that this will create, not the loss of amenity with regard to the planning permission. That will be something which will have to be dealt with at a separate occasion. But with result that we would want to put on one of our conditions, which is that the operation of the building services plant at the rear of the premises should not give rise to nuisance to neighbouring residents. There is a condition which I will look up again to specify it, but it's really all plant, all building services plant operating at the premises should not give rise to nuisance to neighbouring residents. That would be the condition at which I would be looking to attach to any decision if the committee were minded to grant this application.
Thank you for that clarification. As you've referred specifically to what you're expecting of Mr. Falter, may I bring Mr. Falter in just to respond to that? And that was with regard to
it's all
Sorry,
quiet.
Mr. You're on mute.
I'm sorry, Mr. Falter, would you care to respond to the comments that Mr. Mahaffey was making about your ability to monitor CCTV high standards to minimise impact with regard to the e-bikes?
Yes. I mean, look, I guess I want to make the answer as succinct as possible, but in broad terms, I come from an operational background. My last business, I built Africa's leading e-commerce business. Currently employs over 5,000 people doing on-demand deliveries on the continent. The entirety of the business and its operations comes down to control, and it's not just a question of not being of nuisance and not causing distress to any of our neighbours. While this is of extreme importance, it also comes down to the efficient operating of the business. So we're fully aligned in all respects. And yes, I mean, I can of course guarantee that we'll pursue the dispersal plan and all manners of the monitoring and management of our riders to a degree that is, I would say, greatly enhanced compared to not just that of our competitors, but beyond that, by orders of magnitude above your typical delivery operation.
Sorry.
Were you able to hear that response?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, is that the last of the questions from the applicant? Because if so, do any of the objectors have any questions for Mr. Mahaffy? No? In that case, we will move on to the objector's case. They've already agreed to go in the order that's on the attendance list. So, Ms. Trustoff, can I ask you to start? You each have up to 10 minutes.
I hope I'd be quicker. So my objection or my concerns, as I laid out, are in respect of the noise and nuisance that this business could create. It is about the frequency and movement, which is far higher for this business compared to the adjacent restaurants, specifically during nighttime, and here specifically after 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock. It's very important as a resident to me in this area to get a good night's sleep, and by allowing movements, frequent movements in and out of the building, going until 2 o'clock in the morning, with airplanes starting at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning and the traffic starts, that clearly impacts the ability of the residents to get a good night's sleep. So that's why I would hope that, you know, the license doesn't go beyond 24 midnight for any day of the week. Second point was the sale of alcohol. I would be much more comfortable if the drivers would take a picture, and if this picture would be checked by the administration on a regular basis, so that we make sure that in our neighborhood of 1.5 to 2 kilometers, we don't have more dispersal of alcohol across, which has created in some other areas of our neighborhood some issues, and we don't want this to spread. That's all.
Thank you. Ms. Thompson, Lorraine Thompson.
Hi, thanks very much, Madam Chair. I'm aware that I might duplicate some questions that have already come up. Please accept my apologies for that. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm speaking on behalf of the Boltons Association. Our initial objection centred on 3 points: the suitability of the change of use of the premises, public safety, and public nuisance. And I do understand now that point 1 is not pertinent for this forum. That's a planning committee point, but there was one clarification I was seeking from either Mr. Falter or Ms. Palmer about the business type that came from papers that were circulated to us by this committee either on Friday or on Sunday, where there seemed to be that the QC planning consultant was stating that customers can use the retail counter to order, and customers can walk in off the street and buy or collect goods for sale on the premises. When I read Condition 11, which has been submitted to this committee, it states that the operation, the business type, is more of a kind of handling house. In fact, I think Mr. Falter said earlier, it's picked and packed from curated items for collection and delivery. So I, on the condition that was sent here, it said that no member of the public can enter the premises at any time. So my first point, whilst I understand that planning will deal with the basis of Class E, it really is to say, could you just clarify today? It would be so helpful, please, to understand, will there be the opportunity, as the planning consultant says, to actually go into the store and make a purchase for consumers? Moving on to the public nuisance and the public safety, which are related to licensing, I just wanted to make a general note, which I think has just come up a couple of times today. The current volume of pedestrians and vehicular traffic that is operating in this area just now is materially less than normal times due to COVID restrictions. I wouldn't like to take a guess at how much it has been reduced, maybe 60%, 70%. But I do question whether the experience of the 10s can really be held up as representative of daily life. Hopefully we will be back to normal daily life, this year at some point. But those of us who live here and who use Old Brompton Road every day almost, we can barely recognise the quiet, empty road and the quiet, empty street. And not least, we miss, from 100 yards from 154 Old Brompton Road, the sound of the gleeful chat and the children at Faulkner School. So I would just want to emphasise that I don't think we are dealing with the reality of how that street is. When I also did look at the question that came up a second ago from Ms. Palmer, that the on-premise licences, and maybe this is an idea for you, both premises, Nameshaker and Eclipse as was, they had security personnel to enforce their conditions and protect residents. So there is always security personnel at the entrance to all of those premises. I refer to the photos that were submitted on Friday. No other retail or licensed premise on the stretch of Old Brompton Road from Gledhow Gardens to South Kensington Tube Station has business bicycles or other modes of their business transportation parked on the pavement. Any outlet requiring a reduction of the pedestrian pavement, even if it is on their forecourt, they're required to submit a tables and chairs licence, which comes under licensing as well. So whenever there's a reduction in the pavement width owing to outside tables and chairs, that does require a tables and chairs licence. And the other point I would make about bicycles is that for business purposes, that residents are actually required to park their bicycles at designated bike posts on that same stretch, rather than, in front of their buildings on the railings. And there are actually 8 of those designated posts on the stretch of Old Brompton Road from Gledhow Gardens to Rosary Gardens, so either side of 154. During the 10 operation, there is between 1 and 6 bicycles parked outside the shop front at any one time. And we've talked about the protrusion already. We also, I would say yesterday when I passed, not only was there a rear wheel protrusion onto the path, but it was also across the Launders forecourt now as well when 6 bicycles were parked there. The woman with the stroller, she effectively blocks the path to oncoming pedestrians. And at the weekend, I actually witnessed pedestrians having to step aside to now allow oncoming pedestrians to pass. One of the strange quirks of that exact spot is that you have a tree right there, which narrows the path towards the roadside. So we have a strange situation going there of how this bottleneck actually materializes. Sorry. As the business grows, I assume there have to be more bicycles, and I would wonder where they will be parked and what is the correct plan for that. And then finally, as you saw, there was unfortunately a photo of QC employees gathered in the doorway. So for me, from a public nuisance and safety point of view, that was, that is my concern. The second one was about opening hours, and we definitely welcome the proposal to reduce the hours. Our preference would be the delivery of alcohol till 2300 Sunday to Thursday and midnight on Friday and Saturday. Again, I would just go back to full impacts of delivering alcohol are not yet known. The area is not as full and busy as we've talked about. There's a lot of people who are not resident here right now. And until we understand those full impacts, I think it might be more appropriate to come back and reassess it then. I spoke with Dewan News at 155 OBR last week because they have a later licence, and they confirmed to me that they use the late licence less than a handful of occasions in any given year. He said it's almost by exception. And again, what I would be concerned about is if QC's business grows, there is in all probability a greater potential for more nuisance. I mean, naturally, I wish the business to be a success, but for us as residents, the success will come with greater potential for nuisance there. So thanks again for the opportunity. Thank you to Mr. Falter for meeting with us as well. And that's it from me.
Thank you very much. Holly Smith.
I don't have anything further to add.
You don't want to present a case, okay.
No, I mentioned that when I wrote in saying that I would be there mostly as an observer, but thank you anyway.
Thank you. Could I ask members of the committee if they have any questions for any of the objectors, please?
Am I allowed to say something?
I'm sorry, we're at the stage where members of the committee are asking objectors questions.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Mr. Lawton hasn't had a chance to speak yet, Chairman. Mr. Lawton?
I do beg your pardon. Of course you do, sorry. Mr. Lawton, please present your case.
Oh, thank you very much. I will be swift. I think that I don't want to repeat what's already been said more than I have to. So I'll be very brief, really. I mean, ONA's concerns are twofold, ours and bikes. It really comes down to that. We would support the Bolton Association's views on ours, which I think also would, it is supported by the RBKC statement of licensing policy, which I'm sure you know. I'm not going to repeat it, but basically midnight is the is the given hour for closing, and it's also, I think, supported by the proposed conditions by the committee's lawyer. There's the conditions 19 and 20 relating to refuse collections and rubbish bag deposit outside the building, both of which are basically noise issues. So I think that 11 o'clock in the evening, Sunday to Thursday, midnight, Friday and Saturday, would be what we would suggest, and that is a relaxation from what we originally suggested, which was 2,200 hours. So that was on timing on the opening hours. The bikes, we are worried about the bikes, and the whole sort of ethos of this business is that it's going to be quick, it's going to be fast, it's going to be getting stuff out there very, very quickly. So the drivers are going to be rushing, as the competitors all do. The delivery people, we all know about how they drive or ride their bikes. It's fairly dangerous. But I just sort of worry about that sort of thing. How carefully will they park their bicycles in front of the building when they're rushing? They're going to be crossing over the pavement in order to get from the parking spot to the road. I mean, there are people there, as we saw with the photograph, with a buggy and so on. I mean, I can just see that it's going to be potential for difficulty, and possibly, people could get a little bit hurt by it. I don't know. But I don't think that bicycles and people go terribly well together. I think I agree with Bolton Association that the very short time of operation under the TENS is not really good enough, particularly when, in order to see the impact of this business, particularly when we're in lockdown, very many fewer people are around. It will be very different, I hope, as and when we can have more relaxation of these rules. And I wonder whether some sort of provisional license couldn't be suggested. There's one other point which hasn't been mentioned, and that was in the suggested condition 9 by the committee's legal advisor. He's suggested that we should have regular meetings. You'll probably find it somewhere. Condition 9, I think it was. Yes, there we go. RBKC suggested condition, the red one. Yeah. I think that's come from your legal advisor.
Yes.
I think what we would suggest is that, what we'd like to suggest, and I think that the Bolton Association agrees with this, that maybe what we should have is one initial meeting after, say, 3 months or so, to discuss how it's all going, and then at the request of either side, ad hoc meetings. In other words, not have some sort of a condition which says we've got to have these meetings, but if we need to have a meeting, well then the business would agree to meet us. But I think it's an imposition on all of our parts, really, to say we've got to have these meetings if there's nothing to talk about. That's a suggestion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rossi, do you have any questions of the objectors?
Yes, I do. I wanted to ask them if a terminal hour of midnight across the week would be acceptable. My thinking is we make exceptions in days of the week for restaurants and things because that's weekends when people go out. But for this kind of thing, I'm not sure there really is a difference for weekends. So I just wondered if that would be acceptable to the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody want to respond to that? Any of the objectors? Would it be acceptable to you? That's the question that's being asked.
I think if the committee was prepared to accept some sort of, I don't know whether you're able to, some sort of provisional arrangement so we can see how it all goes.
No,
they would agree with that.
Mr. Lawton, we do not issue provisional licenses.
Okay.
That is for bicycles, not for alcohol licenses. But any license that is granted can be reviewed if objections are made about behaviour once the license has been granted. The question was, would you accept midnight as a closing date?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Oretti, do you have any questions of the objectors?
Yes, Chairman. First question, I've got two questions, Chairman. First question is, how far do the objectors live? That's my first question. One can respond on behalf of others. The second one is your worry about the frequency of alcohol items being more after 11 o'clock, say, as opposed to the other items that's been, booking or recorded, for example? Because obviously I think practically looking at lives, I mean, people would order alcohol after 11 o'clock other than any other item that's, that's for your daily usage. Is that what your worry is? Whether it's online booking or is it off license or in premises? So those are my two questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Would any of the objectors like to respond to that?
I'm Susanna Trostorff.
Yes,
I
please.
live within 0.2 miles of the area, and I frequently, that's basically, I just looked it up, and I frequently walk along at evenings and night hours around that time. And in Roland Gardens, we have suffered from occasionally, I've been living here for 20 years, from increased noise of delivery drivers and other people passing through that road. That's why I'm objecting.
Thank you. Do any of the other objectors want to respond to that?
Our area, the Boltons Association, picks up the corner where the 154 Old Brompton Road is. So we have members who live on all those streets there. That's where this is the sort of genesis of our objection, is on their behalf, to be fair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mahaffey, do you have any questions of the objectors?
No, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. The applicant, Ms. Palmer, do you have any questions of the objectors?
Yes, indeed, madam. Thank you very much. I'll take them in the order in which they spoke. And the first person to speak was Ms. Trostorff, who talked about her concern of frequency of movement after 11 o'clock. And Ms. Ms. Trostoff, would you accept that those movements are going to be, or continue to be, frequent anyway, because we've already had some 600 movements in all since this operation began, and it'll just be from time to time that some of them will contain alcohol. Do you accept that?
No, because my concern, which I raised in terms of frequency, was about noise and nuisance. And you, in your statement, compared your proposed business to the neighboring business, like Nam Long, arguing that, you know, sort of the impact on the neighborhood would be the same. And my view is different, because a pure delivery service will have much more movements over the night, per night, than any of Nam Long or the other places. And that's the concern, and that's the issue for the residents living in the neighborhood and not getting a sleep after 12 o'clock.
Sorry, I didn't obviously make the question clear. The question I was putting to you was, do you understand that there will be deliveries in any event, and have been deliveries in any event? Because these are deliveries of convenience goods, not all of which, in fact, a lot of which will not contain any alcohol, and they are happening anyway. So there won't be any increased frequency in those. They're happening anyway. Do you accept that?
Okay.
Thank you very much. That's very kind. Ms. Thompson, you mentioned about the business type, and a very pertinent question on the documents that were sent out yesterday evening. And you mentioned about people actually coming to the premises following the planning consultant's report. As with any new enterprise, there is bound to be evolution. This is the first ZAP to operate, and we hear what is said, and we would ask for a slight amendment to the proposed condition, which indicated originally that members of the public would not be allowed in, to the following, so that they can in fact just slip inside the front door to allow protection from weather, etc. And the condition we would ask is that there shall be no patrons allowed inside the premises except to attend the counter immediately inside the front door of the premises, and then only between the hours of 9 and 6. So anybody attending the premises would still be during what I call normal hours, not in the hours that would cause you any nuisance at all. Does that help you?
No, that was a slightly different point, but thanks for making that clear, because I did worry about them given the weather we've had this week. They had to wait outside. So the point I was asking clarification on was, I think the planning consultant that was used by Mr. Falter's company had stated that people would be able to come in and buy at the counter. Whereas my understanding was that the business was purely either click and collect or delivery. You know, there was no kind of, I can't come in off the street, have a look at what you've got on your shelves and make an order right there and then. I have to make the order, and then now you're proposing I can come in and collect that, or you can deliver it to me. So that's where the confusion was in that email from the planning consultant.
Thank you for clarifying that. The likelihood of anybody wanting to be able to buy over the counter is extremely remote, because there is no display of alcohol or indeed any other product. It's a warehouse type setup. I'll ask Mr. Falter to confirm this, but as I understand it, it's a warehouse sort of setup, and click and collect is the most likely reason for anybody to attend. But if somebody was used to the setup, had come on a click and collect for a grocery and suddenly thought, oh, I wouldn't mind having so-and-so added, then that could happen. I believe that that's the situation. But as I say, when I've finished with the questions, I will get Mr. Falter to check that. You mentioned about the nuisance factor and feeling that the experience that we've had so far operating under 24-hour TENS, with the ability to do that since I think it was the 12th of December, certainly mid-December, was not indicative and was not helpful. I would respectfully submit, and I'd ask you to agree with me, that it is actually more indicative of the fact that nuisance is not being caused because the background noise is so much lower. And if there was to be nuisance, it would most certainly be noticed under the current circumstances, whereas it may not be noticed under normal circumstances. Is that something you're able to accept?
Absolutely not. I mean, I know you don't live in the area, but what we are beset by here, so the Boltons Association, we have a small area here where we were the #1 hotspot for crime on moped. I think it was two and a half years ago. So what you have in this area is an excessively busy drop and load on Old Brompton roads where people are delivering and, you know, stopping vehicles, not least parents or carers who are picking up the kids from the schools. What you then sometimes get is a little bit of jostling for position. You get people tooting their horn, shouting at each other, all the stuff that people do when they're frantically under time pressure or getting annoyed that they can't get to do things their way. So what you're not experiencing, which would increase nuisance, would be that kind of dynamic. And that's just one small example of the dynamic. If you go to the bottom of Hollywood Road, you see how moped drivers from all sorts of delivery companies congregate there because it's easy for them. They chat, they shout to each other. You know, you haven't got a realistic portrayal of the road or the environment just now to actually come up against some of the problems and the obstacles which you will come up against, you know. So I wouldn't be able to accept that at all. You really need to come and experience this and see and feel what it's like. And as I say, I think the noise and nuisance will only be amplified as more people and more businesses return.
Thank you for adding that. Of course, the sort of nuisance you were discussing, and I do appreciate that you live there and you know what you're talking about, was daytime nuisance. And
no, it's not. It's all the time. We live in a part of London. This is 24-hour London. You know, that's why when Susanna was talking, you know, we know when you choose to live in the city, you know what you're coming to. So all I'm telling you just now is that you're not experiencing what it's really like for us.
Well, I'm very sure that Mr. Falter is extremely aware of this, and I will ask him to pick up on this in just a moment. But before I do that, I wanted to pick up on your request for opening hours that you have now altered from your original representation, where you asked that a condition be imposed as midnight throughout the week in accordance with what you're citing as the appropriate policy. And you've now reduced that to 11 a.m. earlier in the week?
11 p.m. I think. But
Sorry,
I think Charles just said that, you know, when asked earlier if it was midnight across the piece, would you be happy to accept it? And he said yes. So we're in the same boat.
Thank you for that. That's helpful. And you also referred to Derwan News. And I hear what he said about not having many movements after midnight. And of course, he has hours until 4 a.m., doesn't he, when
That's right.
Does have movements. Thank you very much for that.
That's by exception, as he said. So yes, he does have that license, and I was clarifying his use of it.
Thank you. And Mr. Lawton, you were concerned about the control that was going to be exercised over bikes. And I would ask you to kindly accept that this operation is unusual in because it does actually have control over its riders, unlike, we would suggest, the majority of other similar operations where riders are used where there is no direct control, no direct sanction. I'm going to ask, if I may, Mr. Falter to respond now to a couple of questions that I perhaps was not able to give enough detail on, or to ask enough detail about. And one of those was a question raised by Miss Thompson, and she was referring to the bikes parked outside, how many there would be, and also the bottleneck that she felt was occurring and the tree narrowing the width. Mr. Falter, could I ask you to answer first that question, and then, if you would, please, to deal with any other issues that you want to pick up on that I've not answered in sufficient depth, or not asked questions on in sufficient depth. Thank you.
Certainly, I think so. On this topic of the bikes parked outside, I mean, I can only repeat what I've said, which is that we will make sure to be in full compliance with laws regarding use of the highways at all times. What I would say is that in this initial stage of our operation, the level of rider utilization, by which I mean, you know, our the extent to which riders are kept busy with deliveries is by definition lower than it may be in future. And as we work that out, our objective is that there should not be any bicycle outside. Now, you know, that there will need to be at some stage, but as we get better at forecasting the flow of deliveries, purely from a business perspective and in the interest of efficiency, we should aim to not have any unutilized bike waiting. So I hope that gives everyone some a little bit of comfort that the situation will get better. Sorry, Ms. Palmer, remind me of the second question.
I think it was about the would someone be popping into the store, and it was what the confusion with your planning versus what the condition is here that you submitted.
Yes, I mean, put very simply, there are 3 ways that a customer can purchase products from our store. And I emphasize the use of that word store rather than any other store, any other word to describe it. But, you know, shop, for example, which is a store or shop. A customer can place an order for delivery to their location. They can place an order for collection from the location, or they can place an order for immediate sort of shopping, let's call it. So yes, that's the way that we're operating.
Thank you.
Having said that, of course, the customer no one at any time will have access to the.
Strictly speaking, this is supposed to be questions from you to the objectors, not the other way around. I think we've done all we can on that for the time being. Could I ask the legal officer to add anything? I think we need to go over the conditions.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask a few questions before I go on to the conditions bit, if you don't mind, just to clarify a few issues of the applicant. Can you just confirm my process? So your general opening hours are 24/7, is that correct?
At the moment, that is what we've drafted. Having heard your legal officer this morning describe a different scenario than I had envisaged, which was as soon as the alcohol is allocated to the order, that the order is completed and that therefore a license is required. So let's take a scenario that someone phones at 3 o'clock in the morning and there is no license in force, that would mean that the store would not be able to allocate the alcohol to the order, so they'd have to leave the order half made up until 7 o'clock the following morning, when they could then complete it and dispatch it. But your officer this morning indicated that he felt that the time that the off license kicked in was not on allocation, it was on dispatch. And if that is the case, then obviously it's a different situation.
That is my understanding. So my understanding is that your general store opening hours for licensable and non-licensable activities is 24/7. In your application, you've said that members of the public opening hours are between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m.
Yes.
And then this is the bit I want clarity on. So in terms of, so I think it's a 2-point question. So in light of that dispatch issue, where the council take the view that the point of sale is upon dispatch, not when the order's taken, in terms of off sales versus deliveries, so are you still asking for off sales to be 24/7, or are you asking them to be in line with the delivery times? Because at the end of the day, you can still take orders beyond, say for example, if midnight was the terminal hour, you could still take orders beyond midnight, but you couldn't dispatch them till the opening hours. So I think what I'm asking is, are you still asking for off sales to be 24 hours, or are you asking for the off sales to be in line with the delivery times?
If the council is giving a very clear indication or statement that it is dispatch that is the key, rather than the allocation that appears in guidance and in guidance and legislation, then I believe that will be the case. But may I please just take quick instructions from my client on that?
And can I just ask out loud, is Fiona Johnson, licensing officer, is that the question that she wants asked, or is there any other question in terms of hours from Fiona? I've got some other questions afterwards, but Fiona, can you just clarify if you've got any other questions?
No further questions, unless my colleague Paul Phelan has any further questions.
No, I'm in agreement with what Miss Limassori has said, so absolutely fine. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So Ms. Palmer's taking instructions from her client. So what she is saying, that if it is correct, once we have all double checked, but I'm pretty certain that dispatch is the point of sale, having looked at the guidance yesterday. If dispatch is the point of sale, then her client, subject to agreement in a minute, would be happy to limit off sale hours to be in line with deliveries. But obviously deliveries could still continue through the night for non-off sale, for non-alcohol.
Thank you very much for giving me that time, and we will accept the reduction of hours to those that we've requested for the delivery of alcohol. So the hours for the sale of alcohol, we will accept to the
delivery times. Obviously, you will still be doing non-alcoholic deliveries 24/7.
Indeed. Oh, absolutely. Yep.
24/7 still. Okay, fine. So that was the first thing I just wanted to clarify. I think this is a question I wrote down, but I think you've answered it since. Do you envisage the public coming into the store? And I think you've said yes, as your model evolves. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Are all orders done online, or I suppose if a customer comes in store, then they might ask for something to be added to their order. Is that correct?
Yes.
And will you only be employing...
Sorry, would you mind if I just clarify that point?
Yeah.
All orders that are placed must be done using our application and technology, which enables us to track and retain clear records of everything. If a customer wanted to attend to place an order, they would need to still use our technology in order to do it. They couldn't just sort of verbally ask someone to give it to them. Does that make sense?
So they'd have to tap into the app outside the shop and say, oh, by the way, I want this additionally to add to the order, and it'll be on your app as well?
Yeah, or using a terminal on site. Yeah, similar to what you would do if you went to Argos, for example.
Okay. Next question. Are all of your delivery drivers going to be employed, or will you be using some who aren't employed?
Joe, would you like to answer that one?
Sure. It may come to pass that we need to use self-employed delivery riders. For now, we commit to not do that for the hours that we have mentioned. And I should say that, just to re-emphasize, I believe very strongly in the model of employment. I think the time for gig workers has passed, and we don't believe in that model. I can't guarantee that we wouldn't need to in some way use that. So, but we do guarantee to do it within the hours, and our intention is to do it more broadly than that.
Thank you. And the delivery drivers will be allowed to come into the store to collect, obviously, the deliveries. That's correct.
They will be.
Yeah. Just a couple more questions. What is the back door used for? Is everything going to be via the front door? What is the back door in Dove Mews going to be used for?
The back door is periodically used for loading of products coming into the premises.
So for when your suppliers bring you stuff, okay. Okay.
Correct.
And then the final point, on page 23 of the main pack, in your application, you say that the hours open to the public are 9 to 5, but then on page 24 in Schedule M, you then go on to say no access to the public apart from click and collect from 6 p.m. to 9 a.m. the following day. Where does the difference between the 5 p.m. and the 6 p.m. come in through? Why isn't Schedule M also from 5 p.m.? If you follow what I mean.
Joe, as you made the application, would you be so kind as to answer that question directly?
I can. I'll do my best. I mean, my answer, which is perhaps not the ideal one, is that this is my first time submitting such an application, and it could be that we have an error here. But I'm happy for you to answer that, Julia.
Okay, so I mean, obviously, I would imagine the application was advertised on the basis that it was open to the public 9 to 5, and so I would imagine that the bit in M should also say no access to the public from 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. rather than 6 p.m. to 9 a.m. Would you agree that's correct?
I think we have to accept that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
that's lovely. Yeah. That's okay. So that's all the questions. Chair, if you're ready for me to go on to the conditions bit, I'm happy to. Or if
yes,
you have questions. Okay.
No, I think we should go on to the conditions, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Could Anne put the first page on, please? I have had a few conversations with officers since this was issued, so I have made a couple of tweaks, which I will verbally read out. Obviously, conditions 1 to 6 are the mandatory conditions which will be put on any licence. I just want to discuss the ones that were raised during the committee before we go on to like 7 and 8. Obviously, you probably won't be willing to accept a condition to restrict all deliveries to be in line with the off-sales times. Can I have your opinion on that?
I confirm that we would not be prepared to accept such a condition as it's not relevant to the licensing objective.
I thought I'd ask. In terms of the condition raised by Keith Mahaffey, which will be along the lines of no noise or vibration associated with the operation of, I think it was mechanical plant or building plant at the premises shall give rise to a nuisance to the occupiers of neighbouring properties. Are you happy with that condition?
I think we would have to accept such a condition, yes.
Thank you. And in terms of bikes being parked on the forecourt, and obviously that's for the highway authority to consider, but I think some of the objectors have raised the point that there is bike parking elsewhere where residents park their bikes or adjoining roads. Would you be willing to accept a condition for no bicycles to be parked on the forecourt fronting the premises?
No, we would not.
Okay, fine. Okay, then moving on to number 7, I don't think that is in dispute. That was suggested by the police. It's our standard condition and your client agreed it. Is that agreed?
Indeed.
Right, moving on to the next one, which the police requested about the daily incident log. I've just added some bits in red, which are our standard condition, and your client's added the bit in blue. Are you happy as is?
I notice it's as per your model condition, but could we just add in little I of that, where it says any other relevant incidents, could we add the words to the licensing objectives so that we all know what it's meant to be relevant to? Okay. So any other incidents relevant to the licensing objectives to be recorded.
That sounds fine to me. Okay. Right, then moving on to number 9, obviously written in black is what the police wanted, written in blue is what your client has suggested, written in red is what is the council's model condition. And I know the objectors made a point about ad hoc meetings rather than imposed meetings. Can I have your view on that red condition, please?
Yes, thank you. I wholly support Mr. Lawton in his comment, and in both of the previous wordings of the condition, it will be noted that in brackets there are the words, unless it is previously agreed in writing by the local residents and residents associations that a meeting is not necessary. And I would be very grateful for the reasons he stated that be included. And obviously we would.
Right. So you'd want those words added in,
yes,
looking in the blue bit to see where those words are.
If it wasn't necessary, we didn't have to have a meeting. As you said, it would be an imposition on all concerned if we were having to organise and attend meetings just because it was a condition on the licence that we did so.
Okay.
And obviously,
but otherwise, how often?
Yes, we would urge the 2 times a year, which is what we had in our condition and which had been agreed with the police.
Okay, I thought the police did quarterly meetings.
They did originally. We asked for 6 monthly and they agreed it.
Okay, fine. Okay, so make a note of that. Police subsequently agreed twice a year, 2 times. Okay, and who do you association? Perhaps if you might wish to direct for a certain resident, should there be residents directly on the premises? How far should the net be cast in terms of resident notification, do you think?
I would have suggested that residents within 50 metres would be more than appropriate.
Thank you. Thank you. But you're happy with that condition subject to those suggestions? Okay, so moving down, the next 2 conditions I've kind of incorporated below into the external management plan rather than standalone conditions. Condition 10, are you happy with my alternative suggested condition? It just rewords it.
Yes, indeed, it's a sensible rewording. The only thing I would ask is if you could kindly put the word front in between external and door to distinguish it from the back door.
Okay, thank you. Right, now this is where I've made a change. So the next bit that's greyed out, that's fine because I think I'm going to use a later condition, so don't worry about that. Number 11, I think there shall be no access to the inside of the premises by members of the public at any time, and click and collect collections by the public shall only be allowed between 9 and I think we agreed it was 1700, not 1800, from the front door of the premises. That was what your client offered.
It was originally, and as I explained to one of the objectors who was clever enough to spot it and raise it, because of the evolution and people perhaps not wanting to literally be stuck outside, we would ask for an alteration to that condition so that it reads, there shall be no patrons allowed inside the premises except to attend the counter immediately inside the front door of the premises.
Hang on, just
between the hours.
Hang on, just bear with me. I'm writing down. Except to attend the counter at
immediately inside the front door of the premises.
Inside the front door of the premises. Yep.
Between the hours of 09 and 1700.
Okay. That's what you would like. Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, that's obviously for the committee to consider. Going over the page, I have number. Right, sorry, just bear with me. It's still on number 11, and obviously you've just tweaked that, and I've subsequently. Can you just bear with me a second while I just check my condition, because I had changed it to there should be no members of the public entering the premises for collections at any time, and the collection of all pre-ordered alcohol by members of the public shall take place between 9 and 5. So obviously we've tweaked that in light of your request that public can come in, subject to them going to the counter by the door. Okay, so that will be for the committee to consider. I've then inserted another condition, which says, and if you could just listen to this and tell me what you think, it's not written there. All collections for delivery from the premises between the hours of 5 p.m. and 9 a.m. the following day shall only take place from the front door of the premises.
I'm so sorry, I've lost you. Which condition are you on?
Right, it's not on the screen. It's something I've put in. So if you could just listen to it and see what you think. I think it was just, I've put all collections for delivery from the premises between the hours of 5 p.m. and 9 a.m. the following day shall only take place from the front door of the premises. So that's all collections, be it for licensable and non-licensable activities, just to take place from the front door.
I'm pretty sure that's all right, but I will just check with my client.
Do you want to do that now?
Yes, he has accepted that. Thank you.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you. Going on to number 12, are you okay with that? That's your supplier deliveries.
Yes.
That's fine, okay. Then going on to 13, are you happy that no deliveries are to be dispatched unless a valid registered address has been given?
Yes.
And obviously we've got subsequent conditions below on challenge 25 and training conditions. Are you happy in number 14 with our amended telephone number condition?
Yes. Yes, we are.
Going on to 15, I've slightly tweaked this. Sorry, I've just added in a few words. I will read it out. So the premises shall operate a challenge 25 age verification policy, and staff and delivery couriers shall be trained in respect of the policy. Staff shall be asked for proof of age from anyone they suspect of being less than 25 years of age, and that staff includes delivery couriers, and then the rest of it's the same. And I put a handwritten note here: staff and couriers shall not hand over alcohol unless they are satisfied that the policy has been satisfied. Are you happy with that?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm just questioning whether number 16 is needed. It says a notice shall be clearly displayed on the premises and on its website showing Challenge 25 is operated. But I think it is, because I think you need it on the website. Are you happy with that condition?
Yes.
Thank you. And then going on to number 17, are you happy with that condition?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. And okay, and so all drivers, I mean, I know you've mentioned that there's a possibility that you might employ self-employed drivers at some point in time, but you were happy for drivers after midnight.
Yes.
If to be under the direct control of the premises.
Yes,
to be directly employed. Yes, I didn't put that as a condition there. Okay, and then going over the page, I've added in above number 18. So where it says the greyed out bit, no deliveries or collections, I've actually put in a condition, if you just like to listen to it. No collections of alcohol from the premises shall take place between midnight and 700 hours the following day. And obviously it's up to the committee whether it's what the terminal allow for the off sales of alcohol is. So it could be midnight or 200 hours. But are you happy to agree that no collections from the premises beyond the terminal hour and 7 a.m?
Indeed, welcome to accept your wording, but would just like to stress how very important the 2 a.m. Is to my client over the weekend.
Okay, that's for the committee, right? And then I think.
Make any comment on that point, or?
I think we're just discussing conditions at this stage, to be honest with you. Moving on to number 18. So this is going to be the dispersal and external management plan, which Mr. Mahaffey requested. And I think this is going to be the part where a lot of the management type issues are going to be put into. So are you happy with the bits in red, plus no engines idling outside the premises added to that?
So let me just make a note. You're wanting to add no engines idling.
Yeah, but that probably, I mean, I know you mentioned that you can't control the suppliers, but certainly the delivery drivers.
Is this at any time of day or night?
I would say so, unless you've got anything else. I mean, obviously you don't want people parking outside with the engines left on at any time, do you?
Well, it's not desirable, but it would be unlikely to cause a nuisance during the day.
So you would prefer between 5 p.m. and 9 a.m. the following day?
Later,
idling.
Later than that, quite honestly.
What would you suggest then?
Can I make a comment in response to your question?
Yeah.
I think, there are two matters that make this a little bit more complex. I think the first thing to say is that the convenience store next door is frequently getting deliveries of stock. I would suggest it's entirely possible that the vehicle that was commented on was delivering to them, as well as it could have been delivering to us. Okay. The other thing to say is it's not straightforward for us to control whether a third party leaves an engine running, and I would say that it's a typical feature of the high street that deliveries are made. We're not going to be receiving deliveries at all in antisocial hours, so I would suggest that it's going to be difficult for us to make a commitment and enforce it here. However, clearly the enforcement actions that are available to the council and the authorities will remain to take action if necessary.
But what about the drivers under your direct control? Obviously, in the external management plan, you'll be able to tell them to turn off their engines when they're parked outside or wherever they're parked.
So would you be prepared would you be prepared, Mr. Falter, to accept no riders' engines idling or delivery couriers, whatever wording we're using?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, and is that could be at any time? Is that okay?
Well, again, Madam Chairman, I would respectfully submit that we're only looking at nuisance issues, and it won't cause a nuisance during the day. The nuisance is likely to be when the sound drops at night. So to be commensurate with the deliveries and collection hours, I would respectfully submit.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and obviously it's up to the committee whether they accept the word blue. Agreed. Recommendations, because obviously that implies that the applicant's got to agree it. So we will review that. Then moving down, just conditions 19.
Sorry, before we move off condition 18, can I comment on the first of the bullet points? We were just looking at the new one at that stage.
Yes.
We would not be prepared to accept or park. Quite prepared to accept the rest of the first bullet point. Delivery drivers not to gather, but the words or park are not appropriate because they are, as far as we understand, allowed to park on the area immediately outside that is within demise.
Mark, okay. What about the rest of the second one, instructing couriers to collect deliveries from the... So the couriers will
you had a query on how to word this, didn't you? And we were looking at it. So to collect deliveries from the inside via the front door, we would suggest.
Okay. Inside via front door.
And then between the hours of 1800 to 08 the following morning.
I don't know where I got 09 from. I think that must be something you put down, didn't you? So you're saying 08. I'm not sure where the 09 came from. I've obviously lifted it from somewhere, but I can't remember where. Okay.
Fine, thank you.
Sorry, I missed that.
The other two bullet points are fine.
Brilliant, lovely. Thank you. Okay, number 19, refuse collections not take place between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. the following day. I think you said that was okay. As was the rubbish. Are you okay with them, 19 and 20? Was that okay with you, 19 and 20?
Yes, sorry, yes.
Sorry. And then 21, I've just added in 2 words, all staff responsible for selling or delivering alcohol, and the rest remains the same. Are you happy with that?
Yes.
And are you happy with 22? That's another training condition.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, that's all the conditions that I've got. I don't know if the chair or anyone else, if I've missed anything that's been raised during the discussions that anyone else wants to bring up now.
I haven't got anything. Does anybody else?
Madam Chairman, can I just make a couple of comments?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Regarding meetings, if they're to be 6 monthly, it's quite a long time, and I'd like to suggest that there's an opportunity for ad hoc meetings should the need arise between the 6 monthly meetings.
Would you prefer?
We will take that into account. Thank you.
That's condition 9. Condition 12, and there's one other one as well, is references to e-bikes being used between 1800 hours and 0800 hours. That sort of implies that deliveries can still take place 24/7, whereas we've agreed that they will not take, even on the applicant's revised schedule. It's the latest it would be 2 a.m. on their.
No, that is only for the sale of alcohol.
No deliveries. There are no deliveries of any sort.
No, that's correct. That is a 24-hour store. We're only here to consider the licensing objectives, which is the off sales of alcohol. So when alcohol deliveries stop at midnight or 2 a.m., other deliveries can still continue. It's not something that we can control.
But that is a public nuisance.
Unfortunately, the Licensing Act only allows us to control licensable activities, and obviously the sale of non-alcoholic goods doesn't fall within our remit.
Ms. Trostov, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I have a question. Would the applicant accept or would be willing to include that the verification when the alcohol is delivered is documented by a picture?
I think you've made that point already, and it has been answered. The committee will consider whether that's reasonable or not.
Yeah, I was just wondering if the applicant was happy already now to include it.
I'm very willing to respond to that, and I can say that it would put a considerable burden and an unreasonable burden on the applicant to try and fulfill that.
Amazon and other delivery drivers do that already now. So I accept your comment, but I'll point out that in e-commerce it's quite normal.
Thank you for that. I think we've reached the end of the meeting. Sorry?
Madam Chairman, before we go, could I bring in a few issues as well with conditions? I've been trying to make contact. There's a couple of issues with regards to the list of things that went into the external management plan. One will be smoking. How are they going to manage smoking outside the premises? And secondly, the use of the rear door. We have residents in Dovemews directly behind the premises. And basically, we can't have people going out there smoking late at night. We have to be able to manage the use of that door with regard to people coming and going from the premises. It's a quiet, reverberant street. There's bedrooms overlooking the rear door, and it's really to ensure that a condition is in place to manage the opening and use of that door at the premises.
Just looking for a smoking condition, if you just bear with me. She's not jumping out. Would the applicant be prepared to accept a smoking condition preventing smoking at the rear of the premises?
I'll check, but I believe that would be in order. I believe that would be acceptable. Mr. Falter, would you be prepared to accept a condition that there will be no smoking at the rear of the premises?
Yes, I can accept that.
Thank you.
Keith, is that okay, or were you looking for more than that?
Yes, that's fine. I was looking for a condition on the fact that the rear door should not be used between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m.
So 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Is the applicant happy to accept no use of rear doors between 10 and 7?
That's not tying in with the times you can receive deliveries at the moment.
Let's have a look.
You're allowed to receive deliveries until 11.
Well, I'd be happy with 11.
11.
To clarify that, but I think there has to be some sort of cut-off period in which the door is used, because there are residents who will be trying to sleep between the hours of 11 and 7.
So we're talking. Sorry, may I just take instructions very briefly from my client? We're talking, Mr. Falter, of hours now between 11 and 7 a.m. that the rear door will not be used. Are you saying at all, Mr. Mahaffey, or for deliveries?
At all.
At all?
Yes.
I mean, I think we just need to be careful that, you know,
well, I wouldn't have an issue with it being used in the event of an emergency. But what I don't want is for delivery drivers coming in through the back door at 11 o'clock in the evening and them congregating outside rather than coming through the front door.
Well, there is already a condition offered that they will only use the front door.
Yeah, that's correct. And then condition 12 related to supplier deliveries.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it's a matter for the committee, but I believe that is OTO's.
Okay, so
and possibly putting the client in difficulties as well.
Okay, so in terms of Keith's suggestion that no use of the rear door between 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. by anyone, how do you feel about that?
That's the one I'm talking about, is saying that it's very difficult to manage. You know, if somebody heard something outside and decided they needed to go and investigate, they'd be in breach of that condition, which would be respectfully a nonsense. We have already got conditions referring to deliveries and making sure that the riders, quite properly, as Mr. Mahaffey says, only use the front. And I would respectfully submit that's enough.
The other issue I would like to just highlight before is to do with bicycles being parked in the rear mews. Is it your intention to park bicycles in the rear mews for if you can't park them on the street?
With the greatest of respect, Mr. Mahaffey, that's not a matter for this committee. Parking is a matter more for highways.
Well, it is something which, if alcohol is being sold from the premises and there is public nuisance arising from it by people parking in there at 2 o'clock in the morning and making noise, that's still part of the public nuisance perspective, isn't it?
So you're saying, would there be parking in those streets late at night which would cause noise?
Yes.
I wonder whether we can put in a delivery condition as well. I mean, I had amalgamated it into the external management plan, but we do have a separate delivery condition, which I can read out if you like and see whether you think it's acceptable. It's if a delivery company is used, the premises licence holder shall provide a management plan to ensure that neighbouring properties are not disturbed by delivery persons and their vehicles, and that can be provided to the council within 21 days. Doesn't need to be agreed, but obviously it's a plan.
Can I take instructions on that, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry for the delay and difficulty of doing this by video call. Would you give me a minute to speak with Ms. Palmer? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the time you've given us, and I apologise for the delay. My client would be willing to accept such a condition.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mahaffey, are you still wishing to speak? You have your hand up.
Oh, sorry, madam. I will take it down. Apologies for that.
That's
Thank you
okay.
very much.
Mr. Lawton, you also have your hand up. Thank you. I think that is it, unless, do the licensing officers have anything to add? No, in that case, we have reached the end of this meeting. I believe that the committee now has all the information we need, so we will retire to make our decision in private. We will not announce the decision today. Instead, the hearing on this application will be closed and the live broadcast will end. A summary of the decision will be sent to the parties within 5 working days of today's hearing, and a full decision will follow as soon as possible thereafter. Thank you all for attending. The hearing is now closed.